Snakes are remarkable creatures. They have no limbs, yet they can climb, swim, and burrow. They can't chew, yet they can devour prey much larger than themselves. They have no ears, but they can detect your approach even before you see them. They have only one lung, and yet they possess two penises. The world of snakes is diverse, fascinating, and spectacular. The tropical rainforests of Central and South America. This is the richest environment on Earth. Leaf-cutter ants snake their way across the forest floor. The males of the little strawberry frog call during the day. Lizards bask in any little patch of sunlight. Snakes abound here, over 500 species of them. Under the soil, one of the world's smallest snake, the worm snake, lives in the nests of ants and termites and feeds on their larvae and pupae. It's very small, only about 10 centimeters long and thinner than the lead in a pencil. It rarely appears above ground unless it's driven out by heavy rains. The world's largest snake relies on water to help support its huge bulk. The anaconda spends its life in or around water. Second in length only to the reticulated python, the much heavier anaconda can reach 8 meters from nose to tail tip. Some reports claim much longer. They lie in wait for animals that come down to the river, such as capybara, agouti, other large mammals, and even caiman. The boa constrictor is often found hanging over rivers, but often ventures further afield. Like its bigger cousin, it doesn't possess any venom apparatus. It's a constrictor, suffocating its prey to death. As it moves across the forest floor, it's clear how the muscular body of the snake propels the reptile forward. In the trees above the boa, there's a whole host of snakes, all the way up to the canopy, exploiting every niche in the environment. Vine snakes are perfectly camouflaged in shape, color, and behavior to blend in with their surroundings. This green parrot snake is on the hunt for frogs and small lizards. Parrot snakes are over 1 meter long, and yet as thin as a twig. Even the boa constrictor regularly climbs trees in search of food. This small specimen is in search of young birds. In the open branches, the birds catch sight of it and all start to make a racket as they mob it. They draw attention to its presence. Now there are 5 or 6 different species of birds here, all giving alarm calls. The female sits tight in the nest on the youngsters, offering them some protection from this would-be predator. Even hummingbirds get in on the act and come buzzing around in an attempt not only to draw attention to the boa, but also to try to drive the snake away. The snake is going to go hungry today. Camouflage is the greatest asset in the trees. The eyelash viper is about 1/2 meter in length. It has quite a thick body, and when it's on a branch, it's very well camouflaged to blend in and look like part of the tree. But there's a yellow or golden color phase of the eyelash viper that's highly specialized in the way it feeds. It deliberately seeks out colorful flowers, such as those of the heliconia. It drapes itself over them and blends in very well with their bright coloration. It waits patiently in the hope that a hummingbird may come along and feed on the flower, and if it does so and doesn't see the danger, the snake can strike. In the rainy season, most afternoons there's a downpour. You can almost set your watch by the time that the heavens open. The fer-de-lance is one of the most dangerous snakes in Central and South America. It's greatly feared by most people. Swamps begin to form, and this is the perfect season for frogs to emerge to start to breed. During the day, many are asleep under leaves, while the lizards are active. After the rain, butterflies emerge from their shelters to spread their wings in the sun. A red-backed tanager reacts to something in the grass. An indigo snake has caught a pit viper. This snake specializes in feeding on other snakes, and although non-venomous itself, it does eat many venomous species. The pit viper's venom has little effect on the indigo snake. The indigo snake kills by constriction, throwing its body coils around its prey, tightening its grip, and preventing it from breathing. Once it's dead, it will swallow it head first. The whole process will take about 15 minutes. Snake-eating snakes aren't that common, given the convenient shape of the prey. This brightly colored coral snake searches out and feeds on ground snakes. Its coloration warns predators that it's highly venomous. The coral snake seizes the ground snake and injects its venom. It takes a few moments for it to take effect, but the coral snake will not let go. Even when the ground snake has stopped struggling, the coral snake still hangs on. It moves its jaws along the body until it gets to the head. Snakes normally swallow their prey head first. It works its way down the body in a side-to-side movement. It will take it about 5 days to digest this snake completely. When night falls, the swamp vibrates with a cacophony of frog calls. But it doesn't always pay to draw attention to yourself. Emontodes is another tree snake that would normally eat this frog. Some snakes, like this one, rely on detecting movement, and the frog knows if it keeps perfectly still, there's a chance that it will survive. This time it works. It's called the red-eyed tree frog for obvious reasons. But despite its big, bright red eyes, the snake hasn't seen it and moves on. On the ground, there are other snakes in search of frogs. This is a hognose viper, a small venomous species that specializes in frogs and toads. This mountain chicken is too big for it to eat. Other animals are hunting for frogs too. This large wolf spider has caught a tree frog and used its venom to kill it. Like snake venom, it also helps with the digestion. It dissolves all the internal body tissues, and the spider sucks them up like a milkshake. The spider moves on to devour its meal in peace. On the ground, the hognose viper has caught a frog, but a frog of this size doesn't really need overpowering with venom, and it will start to swallow it immediately. The victim was a female, attracted by the numerous calling males in the swamp. The viper uses its fangs to maneuver its prey and swallow it. Vipers have very large fangs at the front, curved backwards, which hinge forward when the snake opens its mouth to strike. Behind these are the reserve fangs, which spring forward if their main fang breaks off. At the Picador Institute in Costa Rica, snakes like the fer-de-lance are regularly milked. The fangs are hollow and work like a hypodermic needle. The bushmaster is larger and even more aggressive than the fer-de-lance. This is the largest venomous snake in South America. It could very easily kill a man, so it's very important that an anti-serum is produced to treat anyone who's bitten. The snake cages in the background may look overly secure, but there was an earthquake here a few years ago, and they ended up with a room of 200 venomous snakes crawling around it. The anti-serum produced from the venom is very specific to a particular group of snakes. Coral snakes don't have large fangs and have very small heads. They belong to a group of snakes, like the cobra, which have short pointed fangs that aren't hinged. It's necessary to fix one of these fangs over the tube to extract the venom. It's a dangerous process. Only a tiny amount of venom is collected, but it's enough to kill many, many people. The venom is injected into horses, diluted at first, and then built up to pure venom. The horses build up immunity in their blood, and then they're brought back, and blood is drained. The temporary loss of 5 liters of blood doesn't harm the horse. Once the serum is extracted, the blood is returned to the same horse. The serum is checked for quality to make sure it's pure. Then it's bottled and labeled. Some serums are polyvalent and effective for several types of snake bite. The bite of a coral snake requires a specific serum, hence the black, yellow, and red stripes on the box. The horses are let back into the field, and they will be used in another 6 months or so to produce more serum. Costa Rica's need to produce anti-serum stems from the fact that its rich rainforests are home to some 70 species of snakes, over half of which are venomous. Some other parts of the world don't share this problem. The plains of Canada are huge flat landscapes that are very cold in winter. It's probably the last place you'd expect to find cold-blooded reptiles. There's very little in the way of cover, yet this is home to thousands and thousands of snakes. Almost all belong to one particular species, the red-sided garter snake, which hibernates in fissures in the ground. In May, after a long 6 months hibernation, they begin to emerge. They appear in small numbers at first, maybe 10 to 20, but as the day warms up, more and more snakes come out of the honeycomb of limestone caverns beneath the ground. The males emerge first and wait for the females. When the larger females come out, they have to run the gauntlet of many males. It's very rare that a female will escape from the hibernation den unmated. When a male has mated with a female, her cloaca is sealed with a seminal plug, which will stop other males mating with her, so he ensures that his genes will be passed on to the next generation. Up to 10,000 snakes hibernate in an area not much bigger than a tennis court. It's like a big writhing bowl of spaghetti. Even though the sun is shining now, it's not much above 18 degrees centigrade. It's still quite a cool spring morning. 1 or 2 females get caught on the way out. This female has probably already been inseminated, but these males are still trying to mate with her. What we're about to see hasn't ever been described by scientists, let alone filmed or photographed. The snakes come out of hibernation so dehydrated and desperate for a drink that they bite and chew snow in order to quench their thirst. For a cold-blooded reptile that is trying to raise its body temperature and relying on the sun to do so on a cool morning, eating snow is virtually beyond belief. But this is precisely what these reptiles are doing. Once these animals disperse, they can cover quite large distances, 20, 30, 40, and 50 kilometers away from the nest site. There are many hazards on the way. Many get killed on the roads, others are taken by crows, carnivorous mammals, or collected for the pet trade. The snakes that inhabit the limestone mountains of Croatia are also just coming out of hibernation in spring. A male horned viper suns himself. Once he's raised his body temperature to around 30 degrees centigrade, he'll go in search of a mate. Like most snakes, the male is smaller than the female, 2/3 of the length and about half the body weight. He's often more brightly colored too. The female viper is light and dark brown, while the male is almost black and white with a more distinct pattern. Once he's tracked down a female, which he does by scent, he then rubs his chin over her back to make sure she's receptive. This is about as much as there is in the way of snake courtship. At the other end of his body, he's using one of his 2 penises to fertilize the female. They will stay like this for several minutes, sometimes longer. If the female were to bolt now, she would certainly pull off his penis, which is wedged in place with curved spines. It's fortunate that he has a second in reserve. Then they disperse and have nothing more to do with each other. She keeps the eggs inside her body and gives birth to living young at the height of summer, 3 months after mating. These snakes mainly feed on small rodents and perform a useful role in controlling pests. But in Croatia, no matter where they are, snakes still run into people, usually with only one result: instant death. Both the snakes you have just seen were killed the next day by the local shepherd. Fortunately, snakes are not treated in this way all over the world. There's at least one place where they're treated with reverence. The little village of Cocullo in central Italy is normally a haven of peace and tranquility. But every May, villagers bring snakes to the village from the surrounding fields, a tradition which has been going on for centuries. St. Dominic of Foligno is the patron saint of snake bites and toothache. They carry one of his teeth in a little glass urn. His statue is brought out and draped in snakes. The idea is that the snakes are blessed and paraded each year, and then after taken back into the fields and released. The same snakes are caught year after year. These are four-lined snakes, a particularly placid species. It is hoped that if anyone should be bitten by a snake in the following year, then they shouldn't die. It is worked probably because these snakes are not venomous. The four-lined snake mainly feeds on rats and other rodents, and that does serve the villagers well because it keeps down the pest population. The local youths catch the snakes and parade them around as well. Visitors can touch and handle the snakes, which must be good for snake public relations. Fireworks are set off at the end of the procession. Elsewhere, snakes are viewed in a very different way. Hong Kong is a city of restaurants, and many of these have snake on the menu. The snakes are imported in large numbers from the Chinese mainland and kept alive in the shops where you can select your snake for your meal. The gallbladder is removed first, which is done while the snake is still alive. They can feel where the organ is located and make a small incision between two scales and pop out the gallbladder. The Chinese believe it's a cure for headaches or just a general pick-me-up. There is, of course, no medical basis for this. It's simply bile. Once the cook has taken out the gallbladder, he can kill and skin the snake. This is a rat snake, a non-venomous species. He strips the flesh off the snake using a pencil to get it off the vertebrae, and then he makes a sort of soup, which is very popular. Most people in Hong Kong and China eat snake soup regularly. They say it tastes a bit like chicken. After the meal, the gallbladder is presented, cut open to release the bile, and it's washed down with a cup of tea.
anti-serum.
All sorts of snakes are offered for sale, even venomous ones like the cobra. A snake charmer with a basket of cobras is a common sight in India. Snakes are very hard of hearing, they have no ears as such, and so they can't hear the music. But it's the shape and decoration of the flute and its motion which attracts the snake and makes it spread its hood. Some cobras have the ability to spit venom. The holes are in the front of the fangs and not at the tip, and they can project the venom forward and spit in the face of a predator to blind it temporarily while the snake escapes. In Central Africa, some cobras have become completely aquatic. This is a water cobra, another highly venomous species which feeds on fish. This one is looking for a particular fish, a cichlid, the female of which spends most of her time inside an empty snail shell. The cobra has to search out each shell in turn to find a female. The venom is very toxic and kills the fish very quickly indeed. In the same lake, a young python is investigating the area for food. It's not a particularly aquatic snake, but it does spend a lot of time in water looking for frogs and rodents. The large bulge in its body is evidence of the frog it has just eaten. The Nile monitor is semi-aquatic in its habits. Pythons do eat monitors, and monitors do eat pythons. But the lizard is too large for the snake, and the monitor can only overpower the python by beating it on the ground, which is impossible in the water. Eventually, a stalemate is reached. They split up and go their separate ways, none the worse for the encounter. As the python grows towards its maximum length of 7 meters, its choice of prey will increase in size accordingly. This very large old python has killed a Thompson's gazelle. It has finished constricting it at the side of the road and is trying to swallow it. What the python didn't realize is that as this gazelle is a male, it has very large horns. It can drag this huge animal around in its jaws very easily, but what it can't do is get its mouth over those horns. People have found pythons that have managed to swallow a gazelle like this, with the horns protruding from the side of the snake, killing the reptile during the process of swallowing. It makes many attempts, but at the end of the day it can't swallow it, so it has to leave its kill for the vultures or the hyenas. A young gazelle could be swallowed with ease. Not all snakes kill to eat. Bird eggs are the sole diet of the egg-eating snake. Once it locates the nest, it swallows the eggs easily. In the snake's throat, the egg comes up against spine-like projections from the reptile's vertebrae. With a twist, the shell is broken. The contents of the egg go down into its stomach. The shell and membranes are formed into a little packet, which is coughed up. Now the sharp edges of the shell can't damage the snake's internal organs. Few animals can feed on eggs without spilling some of their contents. This grass snake hasn't come to eat eggs, but to lay them. It's chosen a compost heap, which is warm and well protected. It will lay about a dozen large white eggs. Unlike bird eggs, snake eggs don't have a hard shell. They have a tough, leathery membrane covering them. She will leave them here in the compost heap, and they will take about 2 months to hatch. The hatchling snake has a projection on its snout called an egg tooth that it uses to rip open the shell. The snake emerges, looking round and tasting the atmosphere with its tongue. It's surprising what a large snake you can get in such a small egg. 17 centimeters of snake in 2 centimeters of egg. It must be very tightly coiled up. In a day or two, it sheds its skin, then leaves the safety of the compost heap for the surrounding countryside. The Malaysian pit viper also lays eggs, but unlike the grass snake, she sits on them. This is a rare example of parental care in reptiles. She actually coils round her eggs for 3 months and won't leave them. She doesn't feed, and her only drink comes from rain which lands on her body. It's a long 3 months. She's very thin and emaciated, but her young are now beginning to emerge from the eggs. Only when they've hatched and dispersed will she go in search of food. But the energy she expends by protecting the eggs in this way is worth it to ensure that her 8 or 10 young have a better chance of survival. The Malaysian pit viper is a venomous snake, and the young hatch from the eggs equipped with little venom fangs. The venom will be in full production within a few days. The European adder keeps her eggs inside her body, and they break free from a thin membrane shortly after being laid. The female then leaves the young. Her offspring are completely independent from day one. They emerge from the membrane and slither away. The Asian bamboo pit viper does exactly the same thing. She too has live offspring, but she goes a step further. Once the young have been laid, she will stay with them, watching over them for up to a week or 10 days. This gives them just that little bit of protection in the early days of life when they're very vulnerable. In the American Southwest, rattlesnakes have taken parental duties one step further still. They have a creche system. The females will gather in one area to have their young. They have 10 to 15 pencil-sized offspring and will remain with them for 2 or even 3 weeks and protect them from any predators. The young western diamondback aren't much bigger than a worm, and anything that eats worms might end up eating a newborn rattlesnake. Many fall victims to birds such as the roadrunner. This bird is a true snake hunter and feeds on rattlesnakes and sidewinders. It knows how to tackle them. It grabs them by the head and shakes them against a rock and swallows them down whole. The drier parts of America's desert are dominated by sand dunes, not the easiest of terrain for a limbless reptile. But the sidewinder has evolved a technique for moving in this environment. It throws coils of its body forwards and then uses the rounded part of its coil to grip the sand and pull the body onward. It leaves very distinctive tracks in the sand. This is a small type of rattlesnake, some species of which reach over 2 meters. The sidewinder rarely reaches half that size. Few animals can move at speed across loose sand. It's seeking shade in the heat of the day and will spend the hot afternoon in the shadows. This is a track left by an ordinary rattlesnake. It has made very slow progress in a more or less straight line. It's in the process of shedding its skin, which it does on a regular basis. This is essential for growth. The snake's scales are hard, so they have to be shed, and while new ones are still soft, they grow a little. This also allows them to clean themselves and get rid of ticks and mites. The skin comes off at the head end first, and the snake crawls out, leaving it inside out like a discarded sock. A growing snake will shed its skin many times a year, but an adult snake, which has slowed down in growth, may only shed 3 or 4 times. Every time it sheds its skin, the rattlesnake adds another section to the rattle at the end of its tail. The rattle is very important to a rattlesnake. It's a defensive adaptation to prevent large animals from stepping on the reptile. The rattlesnake evolved, we think, on the plains of North America where large animals, like bison, roamed around. The rattlesnake could be killed or disabled if trodden on, so it needed to advertise its presence, and it does this by having this rattle at the end of its tail, which it shakes, making a very harsh rattling sound. It's certainly audible for quite some distance. Animals usually avoid going any closer. This is the western diamondback rattlesnake, which is found on the plains of southeast Arizona. Today there are no huge herds of bison to rattle at, but the western diamondback rattler does live among herds of cattle. Its rattle is equally effective at advertising its presence to domesticated stock. Each animal keeps a healthy distance from one another. The rattler adopts a strike posture if the cow comes too close. It will strike as a last resort, and a bite from a large rattlesnake like this will kill a cow quite easily. The cow stays away, and the snake moves back to safety. As night falls in Arizona, the spadefoot toads emerge to breed in temporary pools. Some fall victim to the hognose snake. The snake hunts by detecting movement and seizes the toad. It's not a venomous snake or a constrictor. It simply swallows its prey alive and can eat 8 or 10 toads in a single sitting. The hognose is an amphibian specialist. The rattler favors mammals. Rattlesnakes are able to detect warm-blooded prey in complete darkness. They have a pair of openings on their head called pit organs. A heat camera gives us an idea of what they might be able to detect. The snake can detect temperature variations of a fraction of a degree. On a completely moonless night, it can detect and strike at the rodent. It then follows its scent trail to where the victim is dying. As well as disabling the prey, the venom acts internally as well. It starts to digest the rodent even before it gets into the stomach of the snake. This reduces the digestion time from 7 days for a constricted rat to 4 days for one which has been bitten by a rattler. Every bit of the animal is digested: claws, teeth, bones and fur. Rattlesnakes are found from Canada to Brazil, but on one small and remote island, they don't deserve their name. Santa Catalina Island in the Gulf of Mexico is home to a species of rattlesnake found here and nowhere else in the world. It's also home to some very extraordinary cacti and a unique race of woodpecker. The Santa Catalina rattler is better known as the rattleless rattler. The rattlesnake has lost its rattle over millions of years. There are no large mammals on the island to warn off, so it simply lost the need to rattle. Its tail ends with one little rattle bud, just like a newborn ordinary rattler, but the other segments don't latch onto it when it sheds its skin, so it doesn't form a rattle. It still shakes its tail, though, which is common in many snakes, to show it's aggravated, but it's completely silent. Another theory as to why it's lost its rattle is that because of lack of mammals on the island, it has to feed on small birds. It waits in low bushes for birds to come and roost in the evening. If it had a rattle, it could catch on the thorns and make a noise which would scare the birds away. Either way, this rattler is rattleless. The Calabar python of West Africa has a tail that mimics its head. It actually looks more like a head than its real head. When the snake is threatened, it curls up and its real head is deep inside the coils, while its tail remains on the outside. It twitches it to catch a predator's attention, so if a predator attacks, it will attack the tail of the snake, which leaves the head free to come round from the other side and bite the attacker and help drive it away. In Central Australia, another snake uses its tail not to attract predators but to lure prey, in this case a lizard. The death adder has a very fine tail, which it can wriggle to attract insectivorous lizards like the skink. To the lizard, this could be a nice juicy caterpillar or beetle larva. The snake is drawing its victim closer and closer. As the lizard investigates, the snake strikes. Around half of Australia's snakes are venomous. Many are highly dangerous, none more so than this species, the inland taipan or fierce snake. This is a very large snake, over 2 meters long, with large teeth and large venom sacs. One bite from this snake would kill a man. In fact, it would kill several men. One drop would kill 200,000 mice. It's the world's deadliest snake. Almost as deadly are the sea snakes, which inhabit the world's warmer oceans. All of Australia's deadly snakes are related to cobras, but sea snakes have the ultimate in venom. But they're very gentle, and there are very few records of sea snakes biting people. They have such a toxic venom because they feed on fish, and they can't wait for the venom to take effect. Any delay, and the fish could be hundreds of meters away before it dies. So the sea snake needs a venom that will kill its prey almost instantly. A person would have about 45 minutes before the venom would take effect and cause death. The venom works on the nervous system and causes paralysis of the heart and lungs. Olid sea snakes are well adapted for life in the sea. These are at the top of the scale when it comes to sea snakes. They have a flattened body and tail which acts as a rudder. They can spend 15 to 20 minutes under the water before they have to return to the surface for a gulp of air. This type of sea snake keeps its young inside its body and gives birth to live, fully formed young in the sea, so it's completely independent of land and never comes ashore. Most other sea snakes are still tied to the land because each year they have to come ashore to lay their eggs and then return to the sea. This snake isn't hunting, it's the mating season. Like his terrestrial cousins, he rubs his chin along her back to sense whether she is receptive to mate. She moves off, but he follows in hot pursuit. They can chase like this for several hours. He curls his body around hers. He brings his cloaca in line with hers, and for the very first time ever on camera, we can see the mating process. Another of the serpent's secrets is given up, but there could be many more yet to be revealed. Snake venom shows promise of benefiting sufferers from motor neuron and muscular diseases and having a positive effect on human welfare. The more we learn about snakes, the more our traditional fear and loathing of them will seem irrational. The reason for celebrating the snake could spread further than this small Italian village.